मैं कैसे मेजर करूंगा कि जो मैंने ESG प्रैक्टिसेस लगाई है, पहली बात, when will they start showing me that result and what would be the measure of success? इसी इंडस्ट्रीज को डेफिनेटली करना चाहिए.
I think it's not conscious industry considering the world we are living, where climate change has now become so important. Everybody is talking about it. It is obvious that all types of businesses have to be concerned with it.
Welcome to the Corner Office, your go-to podcast where we learn about the world of business, leadership, and success strategies. I'm Ankit Singhi from Corporate Professionals, and today we'll talk about welcoming ESG compliance for corporates and rising above the challenges. Sustainability is much more than a buzzword, and while people may interpret it in their own ways, we need to accept that having sustainable practices is of utmost importance and cannot be ignored. We will discuss the challenges companies are facing while understanding sustainability and, most importantly, invoking it in daily corporate practices. Today we have with us Mr. Ankit Singhi, Head Corporate Affairs and Compliance at Corporate Professionals.
Welcome to the Corner Office, Mr. Ankit Singhi. So I'd like to welcome you here on our podcast, Rising Above Challenges and Welcoming ESG Compliances. So today we'll be talking about ESG acceptability, what exactly are ESG misconceptions, the measures of ESG success in any organization. So first and foremost, I would like to ask you, what are some of the sustainable practices for corporates to follow ESG?
Thank you. I think before I answer that question, first of all, thanks Sanjit for inviting me to Corner Office, that podcast. I was eagerly waiting for this day, and I think many of my colleagues have already been here. So it's good that finally I got that chance. So coming to your question on the sustainable practice, if you see in India or even broadly, there is no roadmap or a code written for sustainable practice. It depends upon organization to organization, even industry to industry. But if I want to tell you in brief in terms of what would be key sustainable practice any organization can do, is to first start with mapping of their stakeholders. If you see any company stakeholders like either employees, shareholders, customers, vendors, and then try to identify the best practice that they can do for any of these stakeholders. Like for employees, giving them a good work environment, creating a diverse and inclusive workforce, customers coming up with right product, making right disclosures in the product, which is such a issue in these days. Then similarly, vendors, having a good vendor management system, fair trade practices with them, taking their feedback from time to time. So there can be many sustainable practices which an organization can do. And in that regard, ESG serves a good benchmark. If you see, it's easier for organizations to divide their sustainable practice in environment, social, and governance. And they can very easily then deploy these practices under each of these heads, mapping the stakeholders under these heads. So that would be some practices. Though, as I said, if you really want to dig into what kind of practices are suitable for an organization, you can, as I mentioned, you can do a mapping of your stakeholders, or there are other exercises. You can also reach out to any consultant who practice in ESG and can help you like us and can help you in identifying these practices and then also implementing it.
So let's say आपने जो ये practices बताई थी, I have mapped it to various stakeholders. How will I ensure its long-term success? मैं कैसे measure करूँगा कि जो मैंने ESG practices लगाई है, पहली बात, when will they start showing me that result and what would be the measure of success?
Okay, so if you want to measure the success, there has to be a certain time frame. So like, for example, when for companies which want to do things in sustainability or in ESG, they tend to set up KPIs, key performance indicators, wherever it is possible in quantitative terms, and otherwise where it is not possible in subjective terms, like for example, employees. So reduce attrition rate, unhappy employees led to higher productivity, and then in terms of, for example, if you bring good efficient processes in your production, then it will increase efficiency, leads to lesser emissions. Similarly, for vendors, there is a good vendor management system, good policies have been there. then you can have a very sustainable supply chain, both upstream and downstream. So there will always be, some things can always be measured in terms of very tangible benefits, and there will be always intangible benefits out of it. And you have to certainly lay out a roadmap as to after what time you will judge the success of the efforts. And you cannot say that for example, I laid out a roadmap and every month I will do assessment. It is also possible, but in some cases there has to be a longer time frame.
Okay.
So generally, when we implement in any organization ESG framework, it typically starts from an implementation period ranging from 6 to 12 months, and then there are benefits that you can measure during the 6 to 12 months also, and then after that.
So as you mentioned, ESG framework you have to apply within a company. What all industries do you think should actually take an effort towards applying these ESG framework within them? Obviously, कुछ चीज तो mandate होता है law से, but as their own practice, कौन सी industries को definitely करना चाहिए?
I think it's not कौन-सी industry, considering the world we are living, where climate change has now become so important, everybody is talking about it. It is obvious that all types of businesses have to be concerned with it. It's not that a service industry generates less emission. Yes, it generates less emission as compared to a manufacturing industry, but it also does it bit in the overall ecosystem. So therefore, it also needs to take those steps within the organization. A manufacturing organization will definitely need to do much more, considering the direct emissions that they are doing. But there is no such thing that only these kind of organizations needs to do. Sustainability is something which everybody has to relate. Yeah, in a very simple way, it's a way how you live your life. So either any setup, any kind of business, they have to work towards creating a sustainable business, irrespective of what kind of sector they are in.
So out of all of these, what do you think are the common misconceptions when applying these ESG within the organization?
I think the concept as such is not fairly understood. In India, we tend to create buzzwords, but the preparations is on a lower side. If you see, there are organizations like, for example, TATA, Infosys, who are doing their sustainability bit since long. But in last 3-4 years, more than sustainability, ESG has become a buzzword, and now everybody wants to do something on ESG. And they want to understand what is ESG, what is sustainability. Is ESG and sustainability are two different things? Are they same? So understanding of the concept, then behavioral change, because any change is always subject to resistance. There are a lot of organizations which are not very keen to go to, because every change, as I mentioned, will have behavioral restrictions or obstacles. Then there is a cost element involved in it, because if I want to create a efficient organization, then I have to move to a better technology, better setup. A lot of things need to be changed. Not necessarily everywhere there will be cost element, but in some cases there will be. So understanding, awareness are both the same things. Cost and acceptance of the fact that we need to do a bit in terms of ESG. There's an American economist, I think it's Friedman, and he made a very important statement many years back. A business responsibility is to do business. So as per him, business primary responsibility was to do business, is to generate profits. That's all. And that statement has been subject to various discussions, controversies since then. And if you see today, if I say that a business responsibility is to only do business, I don't think that will work. Now, world has changed. Your responsibility is also towards your stakeholders, also towards climate. So it cannot be done in the same fashion. So therefore, acceptance of the fact that you need to do something towards your stakeholders, towards your society, is what's the biggest differences. I can give you an example of CSR. In 2014, the companies have mandated CSR. People reluctant to do that still, and for them it was still, for many companies, still a cost burden, compliance burden. They don't want to do it voluntarily. But the reason why government made it mandatory is for the reason that the corporates were not doing something on their own, and they thought that it would be better in India that to mandate something and then do it. So now many corporates have realized this fact, and they are doing more than the normal CSR that they are supposed to undertake. So I think things are changing. Understanding of market realities is also changing. Businesses are now become more adaptive to the requirement of the nature to become more sustainable organization.
Interesting. So आपने बीच में ये दो words use किए थे, sustainability and ESG. What does the difference?
So
क्या ये corporates इसे समझते भी हैं कि इनके बीच में कोई difference है?
I think बहुत एक difference major क्या है? Sustainability is mother of all.
Okay, sustainability is bigger than ESG.
Bigger.
Okay.
ESG is a term coined to report in a way to report the non-financial information. If somebody wants to understand the sustainable practices of a company, and as you mentioned, the benefits, tangible and intangible, what is there from those. To measure those, to understand those, this term was coined as ESG, and there are various reporting frameworks that have been introduced globally. In India, there is BSR, GI, a lot of other frameworks, which is used to report non-financial information on these three aspects to understand what sustainable efforts or practices the organization is following. And that is also, in a sense, also helps you to implement the framework, because it's easier for you. Because sustainability is such a big concept, there will be many things inside it. So to do what to do, not to do. ESG gives you that kind of a comfort that to start with, you're clear that E, S, and G are the three areas where to begin with.
The shape दे दिया है.
And then you can, as you progress within this, then the ambit will definitely grow.
Okay. So इसके अंदर ethics or best practices, are these all similar terms, synonymous, or they have their own meanings?
So ethics, best practices is always something which has been successfully deployed across industry, across companies. That becomes best practice. And ethics is where how you perform anything in terms of being an honest organization, doing what is rightful. So ethics is more in terms of that rather than best practices. Best practices are is historically basis their success. Those have become best practices. So, and if you deploy an ESG framework, both of the areas that you will be working with, like for example, ethics when it comes to vendors, when it comes to the customer, or when it comes to employees, something which you will take in account by framing your policies, by framing your framework, and the best practice aspect is in terms of overall, when you deploy something in an industry, you will look into what other similar industries are doing in terms of their practices, so we can take something good out of that and try to implement that within an organization. So that can be said to be best practices. Like in corporate governance, we say there are best practices across globe, and there are various publications outlining those best practices. So you can take a leaf out of it and then use it.
So आज की डेट में corporates usually ESG frameworks apply करते हैं अपनी कंपनी में. क्या कोई real benefit actually है for the corporates? I mean, see, there is one thing कि हम stakeholders के लिए कर रहे हैं, society के लिए कर रहे हैं, climate के लिए कर रहे हैं. क्या कोई real benefit corporate के लिए है in actually being an ESG conscious company, या it is just our moral duty or moral obligation कि मुझे अपनी climate और society के लिए ये सब करना चाहिए? That's all. That's where my duty ends. But what about the corporates?
I think both are interlinked, because it is no-brainer that it is a responsibility that you need to understand that why this is your responsibility. It is not just somebody saying that it is your responsibility. You need to also understand, because unless you understand the rationale behind something being imposed on you as a responsibility, you will never do it. You will see as a imposed responsibility. That's what happened to
Section 135
CSR. And as I mentioned in one of your earlier questions, then definitely there are benefits. It is not that it has suddenly become a buzzword. If you deploy practices in all the areas in sustainability, then definitely there will be both tangible and intangible benefits. Intangible benefits is better reputation management. Companies see that as a good company. I can give you an example. Like for example, when governance was introduced under Clause 49, and many people saw it as just some procedures. They don't give much value to the concept. And okay, it's good to be a governing company. I can be a good governed company. I can be a good company with good financials, good profit. But slowly they started realizing that better governed companies are getting better value in the market. Investors see them from a different perspective. Why TATA, Infosys, Wipro, these companies have successfully implemented good governance structure, and why they tend to attend those value. If you see, there are many companies on the exchanges now which would have similar size of operation, similar top line, bottom line. But if you see the PE and other values that they're getting, there would be a whole lot of difference. Why? Because if they are both into same industry, doing same kind of business, there is some difference. And that difference is in terms of perception, as the company see that how well governed that company is. What are the structures that they deploy in terms of how they manage their stakeholders, how they do all these things. So therefore, that becomes important to understand that people have now realized, I think it's been now a couple of years, that governance is as it's so good. Similarly, sustainability is two sides of governance. One side is sustainability, one side is governance. So similarly, sustainability will also have its benefit in long term, as I mentioned, in terms of intangible reputation management, better value by the stakeholders or investors. In terms of tangible benefits, as I say, would reduce an employee attrition rate, acceptance by society in terms of your contribution to them, then good job creation, better supply chain management, a lot of things there would be in terms of tangible benefits.
So what do you think stops these corporates from taking consultation on sustainability or ESG? Because I'm sure that there are many organizations taking consultation advisory on that, but still there is not much acceptability. So what do you think actually could be the reason that they have not really walked down this path of taking consultation on accepting these ESG framework or the sustainability practice?
I think this can be looking from a perspective, like for example, BRSR. It's applicable on top 1,000 companies.
Okay.
Listed entity per market capitalization. So all these top listed entities, since they have to publish BRSR, they cannot publish anything. So they are now become aware of more oriented towards ESG and doing things. But apart from these 1,000 companies, if I only said it's a huge ecosystem of companies in India, business in India. How many of them are adopting the ESG? Some of them are, but many of them are not. So it's because this is more about the compliance. This is about understanding your responsibility and a shift towards moving to creating a business which is more sustainable. So in India, compliance is the best route. You first enforce it, and then slowly there is a realization within the market. And therefore, these top 1,000 companies are much more aware about their responsibilities in terms of BRSR and doing ESG framework. The other set of companies will slowly, as they see these companies doing good in terms of implementing, they will achieve. Another important aspect is that a lot of companies who have supply chain engagements in Europe and other parts of the world, those companies are now mandating these supply chain partners to ensure ESG compliances.
Okay.
So that is also something which they are now becoming aware of. They are also making some kind of reportings to their main customers, to those who are supplying, as to what they are doing in ESG, like for example, child labor, whether these companies are doing child labor or not in terms of your emissions. So there are a lot of reportings which they otherwise do. So slowly this will become a much more expanded phenomena, but this will take some time, I believe. But because once this is done with top 1,000 companies, I think it will expand it to other top 2,000 companies. So then more companies will come into the ambit, and more investors will now put forward the requirement of being ESG compliant, do some kind of reporting,
give them more valuation.
So that will also give, because as you are aware, you do a lot of valuations for yourself. And investment banking, there are a lot of funds who invest in companies which are more ESG compliant. So that will also force them. There has to be some kind of motivation. So if they feel there is a motivation in terms of benefits, then they will definitely be more comfortable in doing that.
So are there any risks associated with transitioning to more sustainability practices in the beginning for a company?
So any change, there would be some risk, like for example, resistance risk from the stakeholders and other things, technological risk when you move towards a new technology. There will be these key risks. In terms of other risks, I am not able to think of it at this point of time. But yes, there will be some other risks associated with it, definitely.
Okay, so we are in the last segment of our podcast. Yeah, and it is for much more we'll do in our other series as well. But I have one last question.
Yes.
For you, not from my side, but for our fellow corporates. So let's say I'm a corporate, I'm a company secretary, I'm a compliance person in the company, and I have decided, the management has decided that they now want to follow the ESG guidelines and ESG practice. Now they are talking to you as a consultant and as an advisor. What are the things that you will advise them or guide them to start on this path of being an ESG compliant company? So for the benefits that you mentioned earlier that they would actually have in the long term. So what is that advice that you will tell them? What are these next five steps that they should do to start off on their ESG framework acceptance?
I think first we need to understand the objective behind implementing the scheme or the ESG framework. That's why they want to do it. They want to do it on account of regulatory compulsions, like being a listed entity. They want to do it on account of being a supply chain partner, or they want to do it just like for becoming a more sustainable organization on their own without being any attached things onto it.
So finalizing objective is one.
Objective. Then once we understand the objective, then we need to do a materiality assessment, do a distance study, interview them in terms of the key areas. We want to understand what they are doing in those areas, what is more material, what is less. Once we do a materiality assessment and we interview them, then we objective
on materiality assessment key areas on their business model, or
yes. So in terms of for their business, what is more material in terms of the all stakeholders, all aspects which are related to it, and then considering the materiality that they assign to different things, we will suggest them a framework considering objective words. For example, if they are a value chain partner and they have to do some reporting to their international customers, like you can look into GRI and other global standards, so that when the international customer will look into the reports, it will be much more, they can understand it well because it's a GRI report. They are also already used to see such kind of reports from their other value chain suppliers, so it would be easier for them. If it would be they are doing, for example, they are doing it for their own, there can be many frameworks. We would also like to, we can also search them in terms of coming with a ESG report that can be a mix of TRR, BR, SR, GRI or other concepts.
Okay.
To let their stakeholders know in terms of what they're doing.
Okay.
So it as I mentioned in the beginning, it's a 6 to 12 months. Lot of policies need to be reviewed as to in terms of their internal things, what are doing. Their processes need to be we need to understand their processes in order to understand whether the processes are doing in the right manner in terms of like utilization of water, waste generation, and management. So it's a whole gambit of things that you need to look into before you suggest them some kind of a framework.
Okay. And what do you think is the cost that comes out around for any person to start with the ESG framework?
So cost will depend upon, as I mentioned, a lot of factors. Whether they need to transition to something, for example, as small as switching to LED system of lighting or more energy conservation related equipments within the organization. For example, they are using in terms of logistically, they are using diesel trucks for their transportation, or CNG can be quickly converted to an EV vehicle. So there will be a lot of things that you need to look into from various perspectives, and then you can determine the cost.
Okay.
So like technology, if you have to go to a technology, then definitely there will be some costs associated. If we advise you to deploy some kind of an STP within a compound, like for example, you're a service or an organization and you have your own set of devices, like in Grow, and then you are using a lot of water and you are also discharging it. Then there can be a case made out that you can install a small STP. Then you can reuse your water with flushing and a lot of other things, gardening. So there can be a lot of things that we can look into and then advise.
Okay. So that's the depth of the ESG acceptance is what determines the cost.
Acceptance and the action points that we outlined in the framework, all those things will help.
So as an initial advisory, you take out all these action points that a company or a corporate should use for the application in the ESG framework, and then they take a call on what all action points they want to go ahead with.
Yes, I think first would be we will suggest them some action points. if these are some things which we think can be done, then they will do a cost analysis in terms of benefits, which is better to do it right now. We can defer some action point. Then we finalize a framework along with the set of action paths and the KPIs. Then the cost element will definitely be finalized. This is the action points that we can deliver.
Great. I think that was all for rising above the challenges in the compliance in the ESG. It was a great podcast, and we got to know many things about ESG framework. And we'll continue having these conversations in the upcoming podcast.
And I think you will not let me wait for so long. Like this first podcast that I'm going to share.
I will not. If there would be more podcasts in the regular consistency. But as you mentioned, like as an individual, what are the things in ESG that you do in your daily regular life? Like, I want to understand what are things that I should actually start doing to be a more ESG compliant individual.
So, like for example, I've stopped using shower in my washroom.
No shower.
I don't use shower.
Okay.
And in all my water usage, like my shaving, my toothbrush, I use a glass.
Okay.
This is something which I am doing. I'm also I'm doing this to my kid, and then I try to use metro at times when I go to client's office.
Okay.
To avoid using any cab or public transport, and that is something which I am doing. Then waste is something also we are doing as a society. We are mandated to distribute in terms of impact and non-impact. So that we are trying to rigorously follow as a family. I have informed all of them that why this is important. So such few steps is something which I have started with. And I think as I learn more about this domain, I'll try to implement more.
Okay. That's great news that I'll try to implement all of these things.
But it's very difficult to avoid that inclination of having a shower in your washroom. But still, I think I've tried to avoid that temptation, and I think if years to come, generation will realize that how much water you waste when you use a shower.
Yeah. That is great practice. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on the podcast.
It's been my pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So this concludes our episode on making organization ESG compliant, and we have a lot more in store for you. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned to our space for insights into the corporate world. Like, share and subscribe, and let us know in the comment section of what you'd want to know more about. Thank you.